Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Hope you're doing well. It is Sunday, February 25th, 2018, the 10th of Adar, 5778, and we are going live on Facebook here as well. I have not done a Facebook video in a very, very long time, and just wanted this opportunity to record part of my show and do a live stream as well on Facebook, because I have a lot on my mind. Anyway, get in touch with me, of course, during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com. You can also get in touch with me on Facebook. It's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. And this is what I wanted to share with you. Hypocrisy, if you will. You know, people oftentimes brandish me a right-winger, and whether you agree with that or not, that's up to you. But I think it's only fair when the right, or the so-called right, does something which I think is wrong, to call them out as well, not just calling out people on the so-called left. And I actually hate those terms, but for the sake of conversation, for the sake of the discussion, we'll go with right wing, left wing, and I think we have to call out the right. And I'll tell you what bothers me. This was a story from the Jerusalem Post last week, and it didn't make the front page. Maybe it would on any other day, because of the troubles the Prime Minister of Israel is having right now. This type of news is not on the front pages, but I didn't hear a lot of people making a big deal about it. The article states here, again, from the Jerusalem Post, one day last week, that Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon met with Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah. The two discussed issues related to security, banking, water, electricity, and there was a readout of the meeting. It didn't elaborate other than saying the following. At the same time, the paper points out, the J-Post points out, that Kahlon and Hamdallah's meeting on Monday, this is last Monday, took place after two other meetings between Israeli and Palestinian officials were held the week before. Economy Minister Eli Cohen and PA Economy Minister Abir Uda, if that's how it's pronounced, met in Paris to discuss economic cooperation. And the week before that, Yoav Mordechai, the IDF general responsible for coordinating with Palestinians, met with Hamdallah to speak about Gaza. So in other words, top government officials here in Israel are meeting with those in the Palestinian Authority. Okay, now when Meretz and the Zionist Union, if you want to call them left, when they meet with Mahmoud Abbas, they go to Ramallah and they have these powwows with Mahmoud Abbas, we on the right, we get upset. We say it's wrong. There's no peace process right now. We say these meetings should not take place. So I think it's time to call out those who are part of the Likud, who are part of the government, who they themselves have meetings with top officials in the Palestinian Authority. The graves are still fresh. The two Jews who were murdered in the last month or so, Rabbi Razriel Shevach and Rabbi Itamar Ben Gal, leaving 10 orphans. Rabbi Shevach gunned down there in the Shomron, and Rabbi Itamar Ben Gal murdered in a knife attack about 2-3 weeks ago now. The graves are still fresh, and our leaders are meeting with the Palestinian Authority officials, and that's what makes me upset. The PA, which incites to violence on a daily basis, is being ignored. Our leaders are still meeting with them, despite what happened to these two Jewish souls, despite the fact that they were murdered in cold blood. Our leadership is still meeting with them. Of course, Mahmoud Abbas knows about these meetings. There's no way that they're taking place without Mahmoud Abbas. So while he goes to the UN and bashes Israel and says all these nasty things and says that today's so-called Palestinians are descendants of the Canaanites and spreads all these lies about the Jews and about Israel, and of course incites to violence, and you can just go to Palestinian Media Watch and see it on a daily basis. Despite all that, our leaders are still meeting with them, and I don't understand why. That to me doesn't make sense. And of course, there are always these arguments that, well, the Palestinian Authority, they're our partners, and if not the Palestinian Authority, then you're going to get Hamas, or you're going to get somebody else. And of course, Martin Indyk, the U.S. negotiator, in response to Mahmoud Abbas's speech at the UN last week, called him a moderate. Yet that very day, Palestinian Media Watch talks about incitement and the praise of the murderer, the terrorist, the jihadist who murdered Rabbi Itamar Ben Gal, Hashem Yakom Damo. And while, all that happens, again, the logic is, if you don't have the PA, you're going to get Hamas. Another example here, the head of the UN Special Coordinator in the Middle East, also reported by the Jerusalem Post. He's head of the peace process here, the UN advisor, I guess, or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what he does. Nikolai Mladenov told the Conference of Presidents this past week, he said he was concerned about the situation in Gaza and that radical groups could take over for Hamas. Radical groups, and he mentioned several radical groups, as if Hamas is not a radical organization. Did we already forget the buses which Hamas blew up and the restaurants which they blew up in what I call the Oslo War or the Second Intifada? They're not radical enough. It's like, if you watch the show Fauda, it's like ISIS is worse than Hamas. ISIS is not worse than Hamas. ISIS has a better PR wing than Hamas. It's sick, but ISIS appears to be worse because of the things they do, because they publicize what they do with their public beheadings and lighting people on fire and all this other stuff. It's as if Hamas doesn't throw people off, minorities and Christians or whatnot, off roofs. Just because you don't see it on a daily basis and they don't have that PR department like ISIS has, that doesn't mean Hamas is less evil than ISIS. They're just as evil as ISIS. Nevertheless, this UN coordinator talks about the potential dangers which Israel could suffer and the rocket attacks being launched by these other extremist groups in Gaza, like we didn't get thousands and thousands of rockets launched by Hamas. And my point here is that there's always that argument. We have to talk to Fatah because if not, you'll get Hamas. And if you don't talk to Hamas or deal with them, then you're going to get a group that's even worse to them. And I don't subscribe to this. I did a little bit of research during that Oslo War or Second Intifada, whatever you want to call it, and there were actually more Israelis murdered, according to my statistics, by Fatah, by the Palestinian Authority officials, the policemen who turned their guns on Israelis, who were part of the violence, who were part of all that. More Israelis died at the hands of Fatah than in the hands of Hamas. So I will not accept, people argue that PA and Israel have security coordination. I'm comfortable with the IDF handling all that coordination. I don't think we have to rely on the PA, and we saw them turn their weapons against Israelis time and time again. So don't sell me this story that Hamas is worse than Fatah. Just because Fatah are a bunch of guys in suits, that doesn't make them any less evil than Hamas, and Hamas isn't any less evil than the PR pros, as sick as they are, of ISIS. So, bottom line here, I don't believe that our government should be meeting with the Palestinian Authority, and I think it's fair to call out left, center, right, whatever they want to call themselves. People say that this is the most right-wing government in Israel's history. I think it's hypocritical for the right to keep pointing their fingers at Mahmoud Abbas, saying he doesn't want peace, he's not interested in peace, and we have nothing to do with him until he comes to the table and recognizes Israel and all these other things, yet not on page 1, but towards the other parts of the paper, on page 2 maybe, page 3, throughout the paper, you do have reports of meetings from the Palestinian Authority, between the Palestinian Authority and Israeli officials. I think it's hypocritical. So I think we have the right to call out even those who perhaps we agree with some of the time or most of the time, who consider themselves right-wingers, if you will. They also should be taken to task for holding these types of meetings, which I believe are insensitive and don't add to the cause of peace in any way, shape, or form. So now I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live. And for those of you just joining us, my name is Josh Hasten. I am recording now my show called Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network, at thelandofisrael.com. Get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, Joshua Hasten. And on Twitter, at Josh Hasten. We're going to take a break here, and I'm going to turn off the Facebook Live, and we'll be right back. And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network, at thelandofisrael.com. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Sunday, February 25th, 2018, 10th of Adar, 5778, recording for my Monday show. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for your patience. Those who are watching on Facebook, as you can see, there was a technical glitch, and then the screen went the other way, but I did record about 10 minutes of the show on Facebook. You can watch it on my Facebook page. The United States Department of State released a statement on February 23rd, this past Friday, with some more good news from the Trump administration announcing the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. They pushed that up. I'll read you the full statement here. In May, yes, that's right, folks, this coming May, the United States plans to open a new U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. The opening will coincide with Israel's 70th anniversary. The embassy will initially be located in the Arnona neighborhood in a modern building that now houses consular operations of U.S. Consul General in Jerusalem, on and on. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but bottom line is, I'll read the last sentence. We are excited about taking this historic step and look forward with anticipation to the May opening. It looks like it's happening. I mean, even with the announcements and whatnot, I wasn't sure. But now that the State Department is actually recognizing, acknowledging that the U.S. Embassy is moving to Jerusalem, I think it's really happening, and it looks like it's happening sooner than originally said 2019. Looks like it's happening 2018. The Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, reacted to the announcement, reported here by our friend Raoul Whitliff from Times of Israel. The U.S. decision to relocate its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, will have, quote, long-term implications, he said this morning. Quote, this is a great moment for the citizens of Israel and a historic moment for the state of Israel, Netanyahu told his ministers at the weekly cabinet meeting in the PM's office in Jerusalem. He went on to say all the citizens of Israel will celebrate it together. It has long-term implications and great historic significance. On Saturday night, the Prime Minister actually put out a video praising the U.S. announcement, thanking the President of the United States, Donald Trump, for the move, whose timing was announced this past Friday, following the U.S. President's declaration this past December, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Netanyahu said, I want to thank President Trump on behalf of the entire government and the entire people for both your leadership and friendship. President Trump, you are a great friend to the state of Israel. We thank you. The Prime Minister is also expected to invite President Trump to Israel in May to inaugurate the new U.S. Embassy. So this looks like it's actually happening. Perhaps this will also mean that if you are born in Jerusalem, a U.S. citizen, you're born in Jerusalem, it will actually say Jerusalem, Israel on your passport and any other documentation. Until now, if you're born in Jerusalem, it just says the city. Doesn't say a country, just says the city of Jerusalem. Perhaps that will change, and hopefully a lot of other things will change now that the biggest superpower in the world, our good friends, recognize Jerusalem is in fact, has always been, for the past 3,000 years, the capital of the Jewish people. So that's some good news. At the same time, we've talked about this on the show before, my neighbors in the Nativ Avot neighborhood of Elazar in Gush Etzion, it is getting down to crunch time, another 10 days or so when the Supreme Court ruling will go into effect and the civil administration and whoever else is involved will bring in the bulldozers to destroy 15 homes in the Nativ Avot neighborhood. If you missed the full story, you can listen to past shows. I've covered this story extensively because it affects myself and my neighbors and my friends personally. We're talking about the destruction of 15 homes here in Israel. They were built in 2001 on what was believed to be state land. Then later on, it was determined that perhaps there is a private Arab owner. That has never been proven in court, nevertheless. And despite the fact that the residents were willing to shave off any questionable areas within their own homes, which may be on private land, and we could talk about what private land means it would probably take hours and hours and hours, even though it's never been proven, again, that this is anybody's private land, and nobody will ever have access. No Arab will ever have access to this land. Nevertheless, these 15 homes are still slated for destruction. The news today, however, is that the government unanimously approved a building plan for Nativ Avot, which will include the allocation of funds for the construction of 350 new housing units. In other words, maybe you can explain to me how this makes sense. I don't get it. They're going to destroy 15 houses, and then they're going to build 350 houses. First of all, let's see it happen. Because in Bet El, when the government took down the Ulpana buildings there, the neighborhood in the Ulpana neighborhood in Bet El, they were also promised another 500 units. That hasn't happened. But here we have the approval of 350 units. Again, the decision comes, this is reported by Ynet, as part of the government's move to regulate the Gush Etzion neighborhood of Nativ Avot, part of which is, as I mentioned, slated for evacuation, demolition by March the 6th currently. That's the scheduled date. And you have politicians and the Minister Naftali Bennett celebrating the fact that they're going to regulate, make them it's hard to say it in English, I guess, grant them full compliance, legal status, if you will, and then add another 350 houses. But I have a better plan. I may have said it to you before. Instead of destroying these 15 houses and then rebuilding them perhaps along with 350, why don't we prevent the destruction? Let's not destroy these 15 houses people built with government support, with 300,000 shekels from the government, and moved into on a strategic hilltop in 2001 on land they believed to be state land, only to be told years and years later that perhaps somebody farmed this area. And of course you have the Peace Now organization and the Ishdin group demanding that these buildings be destroyed, demanding that they have a private landowner, an Arab landowner, which was never been proven again. Instead of destroying these buildings, let's keep them up. Let's even compensate those who might have a claim, an unproven claim, and let's prevent the destruction of 15 more houses. To tear down 15 and then to rebuild them maybe 2 meters to the right or to the left, and then another 350, the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. Let's just not destroy the buildings and find a creative solution that everyone benefits from. I guarantee you that these so-called private landowners that Peace Now claims that they have would take the money and run to be compensated for land that's probably not even theirs, that they'll never see because it's in the middle of El Azhar, that they'll never be able to work. It just doesn't make sense to absurdly destroy 15 homes on March 6th. Now, that being said, Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel is calling on the Supreme Court to approve the postponement of that demolition in Nativ Avot. The state actually, since we spoke last, the state filed a motion to the Supreme Court asking for another 3 months before they destroy the houses in order that this new neighborhood between El Azhar and Alon Shut will be constructed for those who are being kicked out of their houses. It's called Area 91, what have you. So Minister Uri Ariel saying, let's do the humanitarian thing and wait until their other houses are ready so that they can move into houses instead of being thrown out into the street. Now, we saw with Amona, the residents who lost their homes and the entire community of Amona was destroyed, till this day are still living in a high school dormitory in nearby Ofra. We actually saw just over the last couple days their homes, and again, when I say homes, I'm talking about trailers, caravans. It looks like a trailer park for those who are listening outside of Israel and don't understand what a caravilla is or a caravan. It's basically a trailer park where these people had nice, big, beautiful homes. They're being downsized to trailer parks. And the Amona people are still living in this dormitory where you have families of 7, 8 people. Parents and all their children have been living in one room over the past year. So at least if these houses, and I hope it doesn't happen, are taken down, Minister Ariel is saying, let's at least build their alternative housing before we tear down their housing. So we will hear about this in the days that come, whether the Supreme Court grants that 3-month delay on the Nativ Avot homes. And people who want to get involved, you go to my Facebook page and see the campaign. The residents of Nativ Avot are in a campaign. They're raising funds to support all of their efforts, everything they're doing to save their homes, for the PR, for the attorney fees, everything that's that they're paying out of pocket. There's one of these Kickstarter type campaigns. Go to my Facebook page and check it out. You can donate today. The last I checked, they were about at, I think, 78% of their goal of what they wanted to raise in order to cover all these costs for the campaign. So go to my Facebook page, check it out, or send me an email, josh@thelandofisrael.com, and I'll direct you to the exact link so you can get involved in the Nativ Avot initiative to save the homes. That's bottom line. At the same time, the Prime Minister of Israel is talking about a massive construction project, considering a massive construction project in Har Bracha. That is the hometown of Rabbi Itamar Ben-Gal, who was murdered just, 2-3 weeks ago near Ariel, at the Ariel Junction, leaving behind 4 children, was murdered by a jihadist who I do not believe was caught. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's still on the loose there. I think they're still trying to find him, the army. And of course, we can talk about what the army, or what rather the politicians should be directing the army to do because of these types of jihadist attacks, not just going on the search for the actual murderer, but perhaps taking wider steps against the hate and incitement and the terror infrastructure in these neighborhoods, all the way from the PA all the way down. Nevertheless, I digress here from what I was talking about, though. But reported here by Israel National News, Likud MKs, members of Knesset Miri Regev, Yariv Levin, and Zev Elkin presented this morning a plan to build 800 housing units in the Har Bracha community in response to the attack. The ministers cited the widow of Rabbi Ben-Gal, calling for, quote, a fitting Zionist response to the murder, adding that the head of the Samaria Regional Council, Yossi Dagan, said that there were 800 housing units in Har Bracha, which could have been granted a valid building plan, but were taken off the table due to the Obama administration pressure, but now it's the time to build. So here's my issue. Of course, I believe Har Bracha should be developed into a city. I believe that 800 units should be built. But, and I can't speak for the family, may they know no other sorrow in their lives. I can't speak for them. And I do agree it's a Zionist move to build in the land of Israel. My issue is we should not wait for a terrorist to murder somebody before we approve these building plans. Our policy on building in Judea and Samaria, Jerusalem, anywhere else in this country should not be contingent on whether or not a terrorist murders somebody. It's either in the plans or it's not in the plans. And if you ask me, these types of projects should be in the plans, regardless of what our enemies are trying to do to us. Building the land of Israel 365 days a year, that is the Zionist plan. That's my opinion on the issue. Again, I can't get it, God forbid, I'm not going to judge any of the statements made by the widow of Rabbi Ben-Gal. She has every right to express her opinion and say this is the response. My opinion is that we should be building all the time, not just as a response to terror. Just build in the land of Israel, period. Here's another article from the Jerusalem Post, and this is not the Onion News Network. This is an actual news item out of Amsterdam. It's actually a JTA Wire story. A 19-year-old Palestinian man is suing a Dutch dog breeder who sold a dog to the Israeli army that the claimant said bit him during a riot in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. Hamza Abu Hashem was bitten in 2014. What was he doing? Throwing rocks at Israeli soldiers. That's what he was doing. And the IDF K9 unit sent in the dogs and bit him. Yes, this terrorist was bitten by a trained dog whose job it is to protect IDF soldiers and Israeli civilians. Now this guy is suing this company in the Netherlands, this dog breeder company in the Netherlands, for $13,500 in damages. His attorney, this guy, this terrorist Abu Hashem, told a newspaper there that the money is for psychological damage sustained by her client. She's seeking an injunction outlawing the sale of dogs to Israel. She says, my client bears serious scars, will remain with him the rest of his life. He's also deeply traumatized by the attack. He shakes when he hears dogs barking. He's too afraid to sleep and suffers from sleepwalking. I say good. Good for him. He should be suffering. And in Israel, in Hebrew, you say magielo. He deserves it because he's a terrorist and he tried to hurt our soldiers. And our soldiers were acting in self-defense by sending in these dogs to protect Israeli civilians and soldiers. And this guy now is going to turn around, this terrorist, and sue the breeder of the dog. No, this is not the Onion News Network. This is an actual case. By the way, this guy, this terrorist, Abu Hashem, he was imprisoned for 3 months at one point for throwing rocks at Israeli soldiers. So here's a bad guy who was bitten by a dog, a good dog, who was doing what he or she was supposed to be doing to protect our soldiers and our civilians in a riot. And let's see how the judge rules in this one. Who knows? Who knows what the judge is going to say in Amsterdam in this case if the dog breeder company is going to be in trouble for selling dogs to the Israeli army. We'll see. But it's unbelievable how this is even a real story, but it is. And finally, this Thursday here marks, all over the world for Jews, marks the holiday, the joyous holiday of Purim in Jerusalem and other walled cities from the time of the leader of Israel, Joshua, from his time and on. If the city was walled, and Jerusalem, of course, is the ultimate example, Purim is on Friday. It's known as Shushan Purim. If we had more time, we'd go into the all the different intricacies of the holiday. It's a joyous holiday, and all the different commandments associated with it, but we're not going to do that, and I'm sure, I would bet that other hosts here on the Land of Israel Network throughout this week talk about the joyous holiday of Purim. But I do want to wish our listeners around the world, if you are celebrating Purim this Thursday, or if you're celebrating Shushan Purim this Friday, have a wonderful, joyous holiday. Happens to be my favorite holiday of all the Jewish holidays during the year because of the message which it sends and the miracles which happened. If you mess with the Jewish people, you're going to get what's coming to you. That's really the bottom line. When God's on your side and you mess with the Jews, you get what's coming to you. And that's really the story of Purim and the evil Haman, the Amalekite, who got what was coming to him, and the victory in the battle to save the Jews of Persia way back. So look up Purim, and definitely listen to the other hosts this week, because I'm sure they're going to be covering some of the hidden meanings of this joyous holiday. So happy Purim to all. Josh Hasten here, broadcasting from Gush Etzion, Israel. Get in touch with me during the week. Josh at thelandofisrael.com on Facebook. It's Joshua Hasten on Twitter at Josh Hasten. If you missed any part of the show, go back and check it out on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on the landofisrael.com website, and of course go to my Facebook page and you could see some of the video. I taped the first 10 minutes on Facebook Live. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week, everybody out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom shalom from Gush Etzion, Israel.
This is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation, wanting to wish everyone a joyous Purim holiday from the entire staff of the Land of Israel Network. All year long, we, like Esther and Mordechai, uncover the real stories behind the story and Hashem's actions behind the scenes. V'nahafachu. Happy Purim, everyone. From Eve Harrow at the Land of Israel Network.